Tell me about your lives, I would say, and then I would listen as women with babies on their laps, some of them still teenagers themselves, told me stories. Some described being transferred between bases right or more times in as many years in each instance, needing to start over in settling their children into things like music lessons or enrichment programs. They explained to how difficult it could be to maintain a career over the course of all those moves. A teacher, for instance, wasn't able to find a job because her new state did not recognize the old state teaching certificate. Nail technicians and physical therapists faced similar problems with listening. Many young parents had trouble finding affordable childcare. All of it, of course, was set by the logistical and emotional burdens of having a loved one deployed for 12 months or more at a time to a place like Kabul or Mosul or in aircraft carrier in the South China Sea. Meeting these spouses instantly put whatever hurt I was feeling into perspective. Their sacrifices were far greater than mine. I sat in these meetings engrossed and somewhat taken aback by the fact that I knew so little about military life. I vowed to myself that if Barack was fortunate enough to be elected, I would find some way to better support these families. All this left me some more energized to help make the final push for Barack and Joe Biden, the affable senator from Delaware, who would soon be and would soon who had soon be announced as his running mate. I felt emboldened to follow my instincts again, surrounded by people who had my back. At public events, I focused on making personal connections with the people I met in small groups and in crowds of thousands in backstage chats and harried rope lines where voters got to see me as a person. They understood that the caricatures were untrue. I had learned that it's harder to hate up close. I would go on to spend the summer of 2008 moving faster and working harder, convinced that I could make a positive difference for Barack. With the conviction that I could make a positive difference for Barack. With the conviction drawing close, I worked with a speechwriter for the first time, a gifted young woman named Shara Horwitz, who helped shape my ideas into a tight 17-minute speech. After weeks of careful preparation, I walked on a stage at Pepsi Center in Denver in late August and stood before an audience of some 20,000 people and a TV audience of millions more ready to articulate to the world I really watch. That night, my brother Greg introduced me. My mother sat in the front row of a skybox looking a little still stunned by how giant the platform for our lives had become. I spoke of my father, his humility, his resilience, and how all that had shaped me and Craig. I tried to give Americans the most intimate view possible of Barack and his noble heart. When I finished, people applauded and applauded, and I felt a powerful blast of relief knowing that maybe I had done something finally to change people's perception of me. It was a big moment for sure, grand and public, and to this day, readily findable on YouTube. But the truth is, for those exact regions, it was only strangely kind of a small moment. My view of things was starting to reverse itself like a sweater slowly being turned inside out. Stages, audiences, lights, applause, these were becoming more normal than I had ever thought they could be. What I lived for now were the unrehearsed on photographed in between moments where Buddy was performing and no one was judging, and real surprise was still possible, where sometimes without warning you would feel a tiny latch spring open on your heart. For this, we need to go back to Montana on the fourth day of July. It was the end of our day there. The summer sun finally dropping behind the western mountains. The sound of firecrackers beginning to pop in the distance. We were holding up for the night at a Holiday Inn Express next to the interstate, with Barack leaving for Missouri the next day, and the girls and I headed home to Chicago. We were tired, all of us. We had done the parade and the picnic. We had engaged with what felt like every last little gathering, last resident in the town of Bud, and now finally we were going to have a little gathering just for Malia. If you asked for at the table, I would have said that we came up as short of her in the end, that her birthday felt like an afterthought in the maelstrom of the campaign. We got together in fluorescent light, low ceilinged conference room in the basement of the room, with a cornered Maya and Susila, plus a handful of staffers who were close to the Malia, and of course the secret service agents who were always close no matter what we had. Some balloons, a grocery store, cake, 10 candles, and the tub of ice cream. There were a few girls brought gifts brought and wrapped on the fly by someone who was not me. The mood was not exactly a desultory, but it was not festive either. It had simply been too long of the day. Barack and I showed a dark look, knowing we had failed. Ultimately, though, like so many things, it was a matter of perception. We had perception how we decided to look at what was in front of us. Barack and I were focused on only our faults and insufficiency, seeing them reflected in that drab room and thrown together party. But Malia was looking for something different, and she saw in it. She saw kind faces, people who loved her, a thicky frosted cake, a little sister and cousin by her side, a new year ahead. She had spent the day outdoors. She had seen a parrot. Tomorrow there would be an aeroplane ride. She marched over to where Barack sat and threw himself into the lap. This, she declared, is the best birthday ever. She didn't notice that both her mom and her dad got teary, or that half the people in the room were now choked up as well, because the right because she was right, and suddenly we all saw it. She was 10 years old that day, and everything was the best.